It's estimated that more than 50% of people will experience a traumatic event in their lifetime. It's also understood that only about 40% of females will not experience hair loss in their lifetime. So half of the population experiences trauma and half of the population experiences hair loss. And these are all interrelated closely to stress. So I'm going to be talking a little bit in this video about trauma, stress, and hair loss and how they could possibly maybe be related. This is something that Western science is still beginning to understand. And yeah, I'm just going to dive in to some little parts of what I have begun to understood through my studies so that I can share a little bit of it with you. First of all, let's talk about stress and its influence on hair loss. If you have ever spoken to somebody about your hair loss or gone into a dermatologist's or a doctor's office regarding your hair loss, you have probably heard oh, did it happen because of stress? Are you stressed? Are you sure that you're looking after yourself? Are you stressed? Now, while there are certain hair loss conditions that are caused by stress and have been proven to be caused by stress, like telogen effluvium, as well as trichotillomania, which is kind of like an OCD-like tendencies that are caused by anxiety, stress, negative emotions, different brain chemicals that ultimately end in you kind of picking out yourself or pulling out your hair or something and can be influenced by stress. There are also things such as alopecia areata or alopecia universalis or totalis or hormonal hair loss that have not been linked to stress. So, big disclaimer here, not all hair loss is caused by stress. Now, let's talk about trauma because trauma and stress are very, very different. First thing I want you to understand is that trauma is defined as anything that your nervous system cannot process in the moment that it occurs. Think about that. Anything that your nervous system cannot process in the moment that it occurs. Okay. So this means that we have things that are developed into two types of trauma. We have big T trauma, which is like going to war, being raped, like very, very big traumatic events, 9/11, that type of thing. And then we have little T trauma, which are things that might seemingly not be such a big deal, but in the moment that it happened, the person who was experiencing it, their nervous system, for some reason or another, was not able to process it. Now, this might mean they were quite young. Maybe they just didn't have the coping mechanism. Maybe they didn't have the support. Maybe there were many, many other things that were happening in their life at that time. It doesn't matter. There's nothing wrong with that. But I want to differentiate between the two because trauma is just something that humans experience. It affects your nervous system, which affects your body. Because it affects your body, this means that it's going to change the way that your brain is made up. It's going to change the way that your microbiome in your gut is made up. It's going to add to increased inflammation because of extended amounts of cortisol in your brain, little things like that. And this, in effect, has been linked in different studies to different autoimmune diseases. Trauma has been linked to different autoimmune diseases, particularly lupus, some hair loss that is associated with these different things. A great book to read about this is actually called The Body Keeps Score, and I'll also try to link a study or two below in the text about this. So when we understand that, we can understand, okay, trauma has a physiological effect on my body and the hormones that it is producing. It has effect on my gut, which then in turn affects my immune system. It can create inflammation. So theoretically then, it could also contribute to an autoimmune disease such as alopecia. I'm not saying that it does. Personally, I've never been able to connect a traumatic event to any hair loss. There was one incident where I started losing my eyebrow shortly after I had a pretty bad car accident. So in that car accident, it was very stressful for me, and my body wasn't able to process what happened in the car accident. My nervous system wasn't able to assimilate and process it. Therefore, it is defined as trauma. And then shortly after, I lost my eyebrow. The problem with this is that because your hair grows and sheds in cycles, it's not something that happens at 8 o'clock in the morning, you have a traumatic event, and then at 8:05 you lose your hair. It's just not that simple. That's not the way the body works. So it makes creating a connection between these two, or discerning that there is no connection between the two, very, very difficult. That's why people are still trying to figure it out. But it's just interesting, kind of play around with this information and see what comes up for you. So now that you have this information, what do you do with it, right? You might be thinking right now, oh, okay, if I've had this traumatic event in my life, it could be related to my hair loss. What am I going to go do to heal it? Something like that. And you just want to kind of jump into action maybe. So I'm just going to give a broad idea on the way that we can begin to heal trauma. Now, because we understand that your trauma is something that affects your nervous system, it would also then make sense to think, okay, I need to do something inside of my nervous system to address the trauma that has occurred. There needs to be a reset inside of my body, right? And this is true. So when we look at different ways to heal trauma, there are many things. There is talk therapy, very, very effective, particularly if you have kind of those big traumas, because taking the information that your brain has received many times in smells and partial memories and being able to put that in words is very healing. The same with your hair loss. So telling your story can be healing, right? There are also things that occur that, number one, maybe there isn't a word for them. Maybe you don't need a word for them. And maybe you need to go a little bit deeper than a word. So this is when we can look at things such as EMDR, EFT tapping. We can look at working with meditative spaces, meditative communication. We can look at things such as embodiment, which is a really, really big one that I'm a big fan of, that I use with 95% of my clients. We can look at shaking. Shaking is a trauma response, and we can reverse engineer our trauma response. So if I begin shaking for 15 minutes, I'm going to notice that something happens to my body, and I could possibly be releasing trauma in that moment. We also do things like working through a yoga class or doing Reiki. There are many, many different healing modalities. The ones that I find most effective and the ones that I teach my clients are yoga and embodiment, because we work with the body to move the energy that is stuck, as well as journaling, meditative conversations, and yeah, those are my favorite ones. Shadow work as well, but those are really, really my favorites, specifically for working with trauma. So follow your gut, follow whatever modality is calling to you. If you are interested in some of the work that I do and you would like to have a conversation about it, down below you will find a link of how to connect with me and how to work with me. And most importantly, please let me know if you're enjoying these videos by liking, subscribing, and commenting. My name is Sheridan. Have a wonderful day.